Hey, Bernadette. Nice to connect with you. Welcome, everybody, to today's Coffee with John. Today, we're talking to Bernadette Burke, co founder and CEO of Brella Productions. Okay, so if somebody goes to Brella.com, they will see something that says that you guys are a strategic event optimization agency for corporate meetings, events, and learning programs. But here's where I want to start.
Mm-hmm.
You help business leaders achieve organization their kind of the learning and professional development goals. That's kind of what you're doing with companies.
Yes.
And so I want to talk about learning today. So it's very different than even it was 3 months ago. You know, we're recording this in this will air April, May of 2026. Learning is completely different. It's a new game, and I'll suggest that since Claude Coworker has really been pretty dominant the last couple months, it's changed it even more. Attention spans are less than a goldfish, studies show, less than 7 seconds. 5 to 7% of people actually finish online programs, is data suggests. People have a hard time sitting and listening to even probably this podcast thus far. If people are like me, I listen at 1.5 because the way my brain is even wired is I can't even listen to people speaking in normal. And so I want to kind of start there, Bernadette, right? And so take us to present day. One more story. When I was 30, I realized that I wasn't learning the way I knew something was off with. I always knew something was off with the way I learned. But I'm going to be 54, and like most parents of people my generation, they just kind of like ignored all that stuff. Right. And when I was 30, I was like, my brain isn't working how I exactly want it to work. I went to my therapist and he said, I took a 5-day kind of test with him, and he said, you should buy a book called Living with Dyslexia. And I said, well, for who? And he said, for you. And so I really started learning how I learned. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. Today's world, though, people have to learn how they learn. And then people have to teach all of these different people different ways to kind of fit that mold. Okay, too much. Now,
never.
How do you learn today, and how has that shifted your business?
So all right. First of all, everybody learns differently.
Everybody.
And I think, and one of the things that actually has been that we're kind of like in the golden age of learning right now, because so many people have been put into these boxes of, oh, this is what normal learning looks like. And there is no normal learning. It's everybody learns a little bit different. We all have we're all processing things differently. And we're really getting into, and this is why this is the golden age of learning right now, is we're finally having different ways for people to get content that actually meets them where they need to be. So you don't have, the kids in the back of the room or the adults in the back room who are slowly going crazy because either they process images different, or they process audio different, or their brain will go from A to apple to banana to aardvark all in the in the blink of an eye. And that's what's really exciting right now, is we're finally beginning to make our peace with that, and not just saying, hey, you're a naughty kid, or you're a troublemaking adult, because we're not meeting people where they need to be met.
Well, so let's kind of dive into that, right? So you have ADHD, which I think most people have. I listened to a podcast recently on David Senra from the founder and CEO of Coinbase, Brian Armstrong. He suggests that what you're coining as the golden age, is really made for people with learning disabilities, ADHD, dyslexia, because they've always had to learn differently and outside of the box. And so you have these people now that we know have learning disabilities, put it under any term you want. And then you have people who learn a certain way, right? And then you have a room full of, let's say, 100 people, of which 75 of them learn a little bit differently. So how do you architect that?
Well,
For the fall. All right, I know I'm asking you big, long questions, but how do you architect that so people actually pay attention, retain it, and then walk away doing something with it?
Yeah. Well, and this is where it gets really interesting, because when we're talking about, learning events, and again, there's a lot of different ways of learning. So you've got traditional, well, you've got traditional classroom style learning, which both, that are applied to both kids and adults. You've got, book-based learning where people are self-educating via a book. Now it would be more of via an ebook. And then you've got basically more in the adult style, you've got your you've got your all-day seminars, your partial day seminars, your virtual seminars, things like that, or your multi-day trainings where you've got someone going either into a classroom, a virtual classroom, or a big group together where they're doing stuff. So there's not, when you get into adult learning, there's like not one single way. But when you're thinking about the architect, a lot of this is you are thinking about what you want your learners to do. And I flip that just because that really influences the learning even more than how does someone ingest it. Because let's say I've got a group of people who have a lot of hands-on tasks that they have to do, I'm going to work with them on a very different training program than if I've got someone who's a computer-based learner, or if I've got someone who's got to do a lot of communication back and forth, or if I'm going to do something even different, if it's going to be, say, someone who is training on leadership. So a lot of it depends on, are they hands-on skills, or are they communication skills, or are they, again, leadership skills are all over the place. So you've got a little of everything in there. So that's the first level.
So that's first level. So as we're going into that level and other levels, if I'm a listener right now of Coffee with John, I'm thinking to myself, okay, is that done through analogies, through stories, through many workshops? How experiential is it? How interactive is it? Like, take me there.
Yeah. Well, so the first thing I want you to do is I want you to think about, what do you want your learners to learn? Because if you don't, and when I say, what do you want them to learn? Is it at the end of this, are your customer service reps going to come out of their training knowing how to service a client? Are you changing a behavior with them so that instead of being, sort of dismissive of clients' woes, you're actually getting into with your clients? Yeah. If that's the goal, then you need to design all of your training around that goal. And if your workers are coming in, are they all native English speakers? Are you working with overseas folks? So if you're working with two different language skills, maybe you need some language coaching along with your customer service coaching. Maybe you need to do some cultural coaching, because maybe if you've got somebody who is overseas, they have, their language skills are great, but they don't understand how someone in another country thinks and behaves, and how people can get a lot of anxiety when they're like trying to make their computer work and it doesn't work, then you might need to do cultural training with those folks.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that can go into that. So it starts with, what do you really want your learners to do? Because otherwise you may be missing half of the battle of what you're trying to train with them.
Yeah. So, okay. So how do people zoom in to know that answer? How do they find out that answer?
Ask the questions. I mean, when at the very beginning, before you do it, as soon as you say, I got to do customer service training, you say, okay, so what do we want? What's the behavior we want to change? Who are the people taking it, and where are they at right now? So once we've sort of figured that out, then we can go, okay, I've got, if I have US based learners, they're this age group, I know they either have long attention spans, short attention spans. And then you can start to go, okay, I'm going to pace this really fast. I'm going to pace this really slow. I'm going to make sure I have a lot of repetitive. I'm going to have a lot of hands-on things. So, but you want to do all that right at the beginning, because if you don't sort of think about all of that right away, what's going to happen is you're going to get partway through and suddenly go, oh, wait a minute. I'm working with overseas workers who don't even know what their end customer, what the end customer looks like. And this is why we keep failing, because we're not really solving the training problem. What we've got is a cultural problem.
So let's talk about the end customer, and then we'll talk about culture.
Yeah.
The end customer, it seems today, and again, I'm kind of giving a broad stroke to this. Sometimes a customer can change.
Absolutely.
It can change, and I think it's harder to. I know talking to clients and then just people in business, people on this podcast. Customers change. They're they're less loyal. All of a sudden they're the end customer is this, but then something comes out on one of the social platform reels, and boom, they've shifted.
Yeah.
So as you're talking, I'm just kind of thinking, the end consumer. I think Viore, for example, if you're familiar with that brand, has taken a tremendous market share from a company like Lululemon. I don't have data in front of me. I just know, all my guy friends who used to wear Lululemon now wear Viore, right? So, and so how often do you need to track the end consumer, the end customer? How often is that changing today?
I mean, when you're building training for people who are going to be customer facing, it's in the business, it's called frontline training. The people who have to do the frontline work with customers. If your customer base is shifting quarterly or semi-annually or annually, you should be updating your training to reflect that.
Yeah.
And now if some ones are a little, a lot of B2B can be a little longer. But unless you're doing a lot of AI, in which case, boy, you better be changing, making sure you're updating it almost monthly, because again, some of what your customers are interested in will be vastly different than it was 6 weeks ago. And if you don't keep that frontline training really up to date and active, that's where you start to see the disconnect, where you get all of those horrible comments that no one wants to see, because you're not keeping things accurate and you're not keeping your frontline people at the level that they need to be. And they're a huge, they may be your customer service in some cases are your sales team, because they're going to help you make sure that people stay with you and keep your retention going.
How important is it for the CEO to be answering customer service calls?
Oh, well, I can't answer that, because I do work with a lot of very large corporations, and I think in most cases the CEO would never be doing that.
So I'll throw something out there, because I work with a lot of, solopreneurs to large organizations. What I find sometimes is the bigger the role, the further sometimes you get away from, as you're talking about the front lines, the further away you get away from the customer. When you move into management, from sales, for example, sometimes it can be days or weeks that you're even actually touching a transaction, because you're dealing with operational and drama and people complaining, yada, yada, yada. In my opinion, in my humble opinion, it should be a role of all C-level executives or managers to be answering customer service calls. Because if they want their finger on the pulse of really what's happening, that's who will tell them. Not the people who are afraid to tell them, the people who will really tell them, who are the customers. Companies will spend millions and millions of dollars and by the way, I think it's worth it, to hire a marketing agency. I think they're great, when really they can get just as amazing sometimes intel by just answering or picking up the phone or sitting on the line. And so, I remember when I was in a certain business and I was running an office in commercial real estate, I would answer the phone sometimes. When our receptionist needed some cover, I would cover sometimes. And the people that would answer the phone, you learn a lot. And so how much value, in your opinion, does that give a company?
Oh, I definitely think that any type of senior leadership should be as close as they're able to. And again, it depends on the size of the organization, but as much as they can, they should shop or interact with their organization at the most basic level of the customer. And if you don't do that, you can't see the struggles that some of the customers go through.
Correct. Right.
Here would be my suggestion. If you're able to. And again, I think until you start getting into some mega organizations, you can do that pretty successfully.
I don't know today. I think if these mega organizations, if they want to really grow, the end user is changing. I find could potentially change so rapidly right now, and that if you don't have time, in my opinion, get Claude, figure out how to use it, and figure out how to use Coworker. Try to find a save 5 to 10 minutes a day and get on the phone with customer service. And by the way, answer the phone, a different name if you don't want people to know that it's you. But if it is you and they call, that's the best PR and marketing that could possibly be done, in my opinion, and the best knowledge you'll ever get. So I just think for learning, I think to really understand the front lines of that, I think is more important today than ever. Not only, but because things are changing too fast.
Oh yeah.
How fast are things changing today? If you had to like get
it's interesting. Oh, I'm sorry. So your question was about how fast things will change. It's lightning fast right now. I just got back about a month ago from a conference with other training leaders, and all of them were basically saying, okay, I see where I am with a lot of my AI adoption for what we need to understand. We need to 2026 needs to be the year of how we as training leaders understand how to train our organization on AI. So no longer is it just like, hey, it's going to be one division or another division, or, and some of it's just at the AI folks. It has to be a lot. It's got to be at every level right now, because things are changing so rapidly, so that if your organization is at all touched by AI, and most of them are at this point, you need to be at least at the same base level, and you need to be planning for more, because you will lose competitive advantage in some area.
Correct. And I think on the flip side of that, the more we get into AI, which we can't stop that train, it is what it is. And it's, by the way, there's a lot of pros to it. I love AI. But on the flip side, the more I think companies get into AI, the more they need to focus on the differentiator, which is customer service. Customer service, customer experience. There's a travel agency that my wife and I use. It's called Magellan Luxury Travel. I don't know if you use them or not. They're incredible. You call them, they book you anywhere in the country, anywhere, like multiple places around the world. When the prices go down, your price goes down. They're unbelievable. Their customer service, they answer the phone, their responsiveness, their email follow-up makes you feel great. That's just a top of mind thing, because we talked to him yesterday. Okay, let's talk about culture. What is culture today? There's the old saying, it's either a training issue or a people issue. So let's just start there when it comes to culture.
Well, there's this interesting thing that about, you have to build culture. And the thing is that every organization has culture. You just may not have your culture that you want.
Question for you. Does culture start from the top, or from your perspective? You're in a lot of big companies doing training. Does the culture start at the top, the middle, or the bottom?
Ooh, I think it actually is everywhere. And this is where you sometimes have a lot of disconnect, because you may have some folks at the top who have this feeling of what the culture should be. You've got people in the middle who are executing on a form of culture. And then you have the people at the bottom who are getting all of that filtered down, and also just looking at what their individual teams are. And it may not be the same. So usually a company's actual culture is some kind of amalgam of all of that. And the problem is, if those are three very different things, if what your leaders are saying, what your infrastructure is saying, and what your people are experiencing with their direct managers are all different, it's going to be chaotic. And I think a lot of organizations are dealing with that right now.
Give me any data that you have on the inefficiency of that. Can you quantify that?
Oh boy. So I can quantify it more in the fact that if you have a negative culture, you're going to end up having more time off. I don't remember. It's something like the amount of people taking time off increases by like 10 to 20%.
Yeah.
You'll have more, depending on the workplace, you may have more injuries in the workplace. You may have more lost business. There's a lot of sort of trickle down, to a negative culture. The biggest thing is a ton of turnover, which can be really brutal.
Can be brutal. Here's what I see a lot of times. The leaders of every company are responsible for 95% of a culture. Then if they can articulate the message to their managers and those managers can carry the message, if they can't, people quit managers, not companies, in my opinion. And then if you have toxic leadership, if you have toxic managers, and if you have toxic salespeople, you lose the people you're talking about, like people leave, you lose the good people if you keep the toxic people.
Yes.
So going back to, is it a training issue or a people issue? How do you train people to, and then how do you observe to see if we can raise their level of potential, if they're in the wrong seat, or if they need to go?
Well, wrong seat is one of them. And that's actually a huge part of it, because if you're trying to have someone who doesn't have the inherent skill levels and they don't have the mindset for the role they're going into, there's going to be dissonance right away. Everybody will pick up on it. Yeah. And yeah, you can train really hard and maybe get them up to speed, but they're never going to be the high performer. So part of that is really assess, is somebody really in that wrong seat? Now, let's just say that they are in the right seat, they've got all the characteristics that are needed, they got the background skill, then it's just a matter of, okay, are you welcoming them into the team? And I know this sounds very squishy for some people. It's like, but if you are not actively welcoming in there, no one wants to feel like an outcast. We all turn off, we all walk away. If you're not welcoming them from day one, if you're not giving them the tools to find everything, if everything is hard over and over again, especially if you've got a remote workforce, then people they never make that connection, and so if they're not connecting with their team, because as you said, people, it's all about their leaders, but it's also about their team. If you've got an awesome team, but kind of a leader, you can actually do pretty well. And, eventually, hopefully the leader will go away. If your team is toxic and your leader is toxic and your leadership is toxic, no one's going to stay. Yeah. But so really it's about, you've got to make sure your systems are put into place, because that should boot out the bad leaders. It should make sure that from day one, everyone feels like they are part of the team, that they are being met, that they're given the tools, which gets back into our golden age of learning. Yeah. Because if you are saying, hey, I'm going to make sure that, I'm going to give you, like, if let's say you've got long commutes to go to, you're on sales calls or something like that, and you do a lot of in person. Well, maybe I'm going to feed you podcasts. Maybe I'm going to deliver stuff to you that goes really well on a cell phone or that. Maybe I'm going to have a lot of mentoring coaching that can be done on a phone, because you're not going to be sitting at a computer all of the time. Yeah. Or maybe I'm going to make a bunch of in-services where we get together and we can talk about, hey, we're seeing all this out in the field and our materials are just not doing it anymore. We need better materials. Yeah.
A couple of things. I love everything that you just said. I think your role and talking about training is so important. I mean, and I know we're getting to a lot of kind of intense topics right now as we're kind of like, trying to get to a lot of things. But I also want to simulate the importance of training. The importance of training is critical. It's complex, and it can be confusing, because what you see on the surface may be a tsunami underneath about to, explode. And so I don't know if companies train enough. And when they train, sometimes it feels like they're training the wrong corporate only stuff. Right. Mm-hmm. And so just getting back to this golden age that you're talking about, I really like that term. I'll give you attribution, but I'm going to steal it. And so, this golden age where everybody learns differently, and you have all of these, different generations within a company. How does a company in a boardroom right now who's listening figure out the training? There's
Mhm.
so many, like what you just said, like I think it's brilliant, and I don't understand why companies don't think like this enough. I do a lot of workshops and trainings, keynotes, as well as a lot of one-on-one coaching.
Mhm.
But a lot of times, like I'll say to companies, well, if you're creating a training manual, like create it not only in Word or whatever you're doing, but make a podcast of it.
Mhm.
Make it so people can walk with it, drive with it, and that still seems foreign to a lot of companies. It seems like with the technology advancements that we've had, training seems to be only in a classroom, and the repurpose of that classroom seems a bit archaic for people to start accept, kind of, what's the word I'm looking? Embrace it,
Mhm.
and have this huge library of, okay, you learn through podcasts, great. This entire seminar has been broken up into 25-minute podcasts. Great. Oh, you like to do read and take tests to make sure. Great. Here's our Thinkific foundation. How do you get a company to listen and expand their level of understanding and awareness of what all of these golden age of learning, different people and the different ways they learn, embrace today?
Mhm. Well, it all starts with outcomes. I mean, when you look at the biggest thing you have to look at is what is the cost of failure? If you can basically get
Quantify that, because that's really important,
exactly,
because
that's
I don't think
exactly it.
people quantify that enough, right? If you look at the hero's journey, right? You got the
Mhm.
hero and the guide, you got success, you got failure, right? What does it cost to fail? What does it cost to fail,
Mhm.
Bernadette?
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, if one of your sales staff makes one less sale every week, what does that do to your bottom line? Especially if you're looking over 100 staff. If one customer service person makes somebody pissed off and decides, nope, I'm done with your company. What's the loss cost? If someone takes 3 times as long to solve a tech problem, and so they're online and you're paying for them, what's the cost to your bottom line? So there's a lot of different ways you can break that up. And as soon as you start looking at where are the pain points in your business, how long does it take to onboard someone? If you can shave a month off of that by making their onboard training more digestible, if you can lose one less person by making them feel like they're more of your team, and
Right.
so you don't have that cost, and again, depending on your industry, it can cost tens, if even $100,000 or more to onboard a new person. So you have to keep thinking in terms of cost. Once you start to think of that, then the training basically becomes much more easy, because first of all, you have identified where the real problems are, and you know where the costs are, and you know how to measure success.
Yeah. So a couple things I just want to kind of highlight if I'm the listener as I'm kind of zooming out on this. A couple things to think about. Cost of acquisition of a client,
Mhm.
how long it takes to get a client, and the lifetime value of a client. And
Mhm.
so if you understand those numbers within a company, and you say, okay, the lifetime value of this client is, I don't know, let's just say for the sake of discussion, $1,000, and we start seeing things starting to fall off at $400
Mhm.
quantifiably. I don't know if that's a word, but if we quantify that, there's a problem.
Yes,
So
exactly.
we now look and say, okay, where's the training going, right?
Mhm.
What's going wrong in the continuum of the training? Spot checking, right? The person who's, the bottleneck, obviously go back to this, is why C-level execs, in my opinion, managers need to be on the front lines of taking customer service calls and inspecting what they expect. It's really, really important. And to your, what you said earlier, which I agree, what's the cost of failure if you don't do that? What's the
Mhm.
cost of failure? Okay, so you're a chief learning officer. You graduated from Northwestern School of Communication. If you had to go back, maybe you do, but if you had to go back and teach a class, what would it be and why?
Oh boy. That's hard, because There's so many good classes out there right now, and I'm
What
more of
what
I
class
love
isn't
being a
there?
learner. I think a lot of what I would want to do is talk about training for people. And I say that more from the standpoint of not in terms of just, I mean, you do look at instructional design, you look at communications. I'm a big fan of communicators, but really going, okay, how do you keep refreshing yourself to look at who your end person is? Not just look at the formula of the day. This is the formula of the day. This is the formula for a good LinkedIn ad. This is the formula for a good whatever YouTube posting or something like that. That's very accurate for a short period of time. But going, all right, how do I keep refreshing that? How do I keep relearning things? And I think it's almost like sort of the art of relearning.
Yeah.
So that would be something that I think would be fun to have a long discussion with folks about, is how do you relearn?
How do you relearn and learn how you learn? And how do you relearn all the technology of today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't get stuck on one formula.
Yeah, it's true. Adaptability is really important. My class would be how to get a job, how to interview, how to ask questions, and how to be bold. I think a lot of kids graduate college and they have no clue what that process is. And they just send out a lot of emails and hope. That's not a great strategy. Take me back to a time maybe before you were 10 years old, that area. Who is a mentor that had a big influence in your life that you kind of still carry in today's world of your business?
I don't know that I have a specific mentor. It's interesting because I always wanted a really great business mentor. And I feel like I co-founded my business right before it was easier to find them. So I have a lot of mentors that are book-based, and I am a ridiculous reader. And that's where I find a lot of inspiration from a lot of different voices, because they each sort of give me a little background either into something that I think about of myself or something that I think about someone else. And they help me to give like, oh, I need to think about this because this person may be looking at a problem very, very differently than I am.
Yeah.
And now I have better insight into that.
Give me one example on what you've read and how you've applied it to your business.
Yeah. So there is a book. I actually have it on my right because I always forget the name of it. And it's called Sorry I'm Late. I Didn't Want to Come by Jessica Pan. It's a great book. It's about a woman who basically, I think she is or was a writer for the Times, and basically took a year, and was a very, very much an introvert, and decided to take herself out of her comfort zone and do crazy extrovert things for 1 year, including stand up and all sorts of things. And I love the book. And it was great because it really gave me a good insight into, especially now with a lot of Gen Z folks who have a lot more introverted tendencies, some of the challenge that, hardcore introverts are going through, and how to build a bridge to make things more inclusive for them.
Yeah.
I love, and it was also really, really funny too. So I always like a funny book.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. It must have, that probably gives you another layer of insight when you're, facilitating a room to help the introverts kind of like, get out of their shell a little bit.
Absolutely.
I think that's great. Biggest lesson you've learned in your business?
Oh, you gotta watch those finances. One of the things is I'm in a very creative industry, and there was a book by David Baker several years ago that really was aimed at financials for people who work in marketing and communications. And boy, it was really good because it was like, go to the numbers, go to the numbers, go to the numbers. Even if you're creative, go to the numbers.
Yeah. There's a company that a lot of people use. It's a sponsor of one of my favorite podcasts called Ramp that people use to just monitor expenses and, track revenues and
Ramp's great.
Profitability. Do you use Ramp?
I don't, but I am on their list of stuff, and I partially because there's another author that I love that supports them, and I love their model. And if I was going to start fresh, I would totally be in their model.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole experience, if somebody goes to your website, from start to finish was flawless and painless? What can a client experience with you?
We're here to basically help you answer the questions. We do a lot of bridge building because complex multi-day events, you've got a lot of different people going, a lot of people, if you are a normal business owner, maybe a head of sales or head of marketing, you know your aspect, but you don't necessarily know all of the technical details. They can be overwhelming and they can be really, really expensive. So we go through and make sure that all of the connections are clear. We can basically make sure that you are not spending your money in ways that are not benefiting you. We're all about outcomes. So we always want to know what's the outcome of the event first so that we can build everything along the way. And our biggest thing is about making sure that an audience from the very beginning through the very end. And when I say the beginning, from before they even get their first invitation until 6 months, a year later, they are being engaged with to the fullest extent so that the whole experience is meaningful and really delivers ROI on what you're putting forward for that.
That's great. And your ideal clients are?
Large organizations. Generally, we like folks who are national or global. And they're folks usually mostly in B2B because B2B people have a lot of complex communications that they've got to get across, and either inward or outward facing. So we've worked with leadership, we've worked with sales, marketing, training, all those lovely people.
Good. A message you want to give them in closing, about you and your company, and a shameless plug?
Well, first of all, we want to make events better for everybody. We want people to be able to learn, and we want businesses who may be spending lots and lots of money to get the full return, and the audience to get the full return. Life is short, so let's not waste our time.
Make it count, right? Yeah. All right, quick speed round. If you could have coffee with anybody in the world, living or dead, who would it be?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. There's so many people I would love to have. I would love to have it with Gandhi. I would love to have it with Abe Lincoln. A whole bunch of those cool people.
All right, good. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
Be creative, but watch the finances.
Finish this sentence. Last question. One thing that everybody needs to do to grow their learning within their company is?
Be a learner yourself.
Okay. Yeah, that's well said. Coffee community. This podcast used to be called Think Business. So I'm always used to saying Think Community. So I just changed the name and rebranded it a little bit because I had this tip series called Coffee with John that everybody liked, and Think Business was feeling a little bit corporate. And I wanted it to feel like all my podcasts, which is two people having coffee and the listener kind of thinking like they're kind of alongside us, asking questions that they would want to ask. This was a great conversation, Bernadette. I really appreciate it. You talked about the importance of training, the importance of knowing the outcome before you even begin, the importance of creating an experience way before things even begin, planning. A lot of times when I'm working with my clients on annual meetings, we're starting like 8 months before. One of the things I talk about is there's 3 meetings in every meeting. There's the meeting before the meeting, and the meeting after the meeting. And the meeting before the meeting is probably the most important meeting. The preparation, the mapping things out, understanding, like you talked about, the people, what we want to accomplish, the roles, responsibilities. There's so much that goes into what you do. Training is not just a quick impromptu workshop. It's zooming out and looking at the big picture. I love how you talked about, this is the golden age of learning. It's never been easier. Yet sometimes I think because it's so easy and quick, sometimes people resist it. There's a great book, one of my favorite books by Stephen Pressfield called The War of Art. And what it talks about is resistance, that we as human beings, we resist what we need to do most. And what we need to do most right now, to your ending piece, is learn. And we need to learn and commit to learning something new 3 to 5 minutes every day, or we will get left behind. We're looking at the landscape and we're seeing it move quickly. So we can either stay complacent or do our best to stay ahead of real time as best we can. And listeners, that requires us to study and to learn. That's the art and the science of business, of growing as an individual and as a leader within a business. If, in my opinion, as a business coach, if the leaders aren't researching and studying and doing and learning new things, it trickles down. 95%, in my opinion, of everything that a leader does is followed. And and you touched on culture and all of that. So anyway, in closing, I will say that I think what you're doing is great. I think training is one of the most important things. Companies need to do more of it. And I will stand by my thought that no matter how busy any C-level exec is, get on the phone with customer service and really get a pulse of what's going on in your business and with your customers. It's the most important thing, in my opinion, one of the most important things that you can do. Bernadette, this is great. You can reach Bernadette at Brella.com, Brella. Any closing thoughts, Bernadette?
Oh, I just hope everyone gets out and gets their learning on.
Get your learning on. Brella.com. If anybody wants to connect with me, johndwoskin.com. Bernadette, thanks so much. This was great. I loved it.
Oh, it was wonderful talking with you.